paranormal,
ghosts,
spirits,
demons,
reincarnation,
past lives,
the afterlife,
divination,
exorcisms,
witchcraft,
the unseen.
He's psychic medium Chris George.
And he's Victor the Voice Fuhrman.
We are Second Sight Radio.
Get better and better and really produce a show that's quality and a show that our listeners will love.
All right, beautiful, and well said as always. Anyway, people, our call number is 818-431-8214. That's 818-431-8214. Chris, did you hear that feedback?
Yeah, I think that may be coming through someone's PC. Deborah, can you are you able to mute your PC?
I've got the thing muted, so I'm not sure where that's coming from, to be honest with you.
Okay. Chris, is that coming from yours?
It's not coming from here.
It's like a feedback.
Okay. Well, anyway, we have a real interesting agenda this evening. We have a Gemstone of the Week, the birthday segment, and the first ever Church of Second Sight on DCM Wicked Radio, which I'm excited about. My fan page is Psychic Medium Chris George. Victor's fan page is Victor the Voice Fuhrman. Like the pages. If you like my page, there's a chance you get a free reading. I give away about 8 every single month, so like the page, people. All right, let's see what we got going on over here. Birthdays, famous birthdays this week. We have Charles Bronson, Roseanne Barr, I don't know how famous she is, Dennis Miller. We have Hot Lips Houlihan, Victor. I know you had some dreams about her back in the day. We have Walter Cronkite, Roy Rogers, Art Garfunkel, Sally Fields, Madam Curry, Gordon Ramsay, and Lou Ferrigno. I think that might be coming from the phone line, Victor.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that crossover is coming from.
Right, and my word of the week is you can watch what happens, you can make things happen, or you can wonder what the hell happened. You choose. Vic, would you like to introduce our guest?
Chris, our guest on the first DTM-based Second Sight radio show is Debra Robinson. Debra is a professional psychic and carries on dual careers in music performance and publishing. She works as a floating member of several paranormal investigation groups, and she also does private readings. She also heads JSMS, an annual charity skating event, and lives in a haunted house in a small town in Ohio. Welcome, Debra Robinson. Good evening, Debra.
Hi, how's everybody doing tonight?
Wonderful, thank you.
We're doing great, and like Victor said, this is our first show on the net. Victor, that is driving me crazy. It's very hard to talk over all that sound. It's not like there's another radio show going on.
You know what? I'd just like to try an experiment. Just out of curiosity, Debra, would you just mute your Skype session for 1 second?
Okay,
On the bottom of the bar, there's a mute button where your microphone is. Just click on that microphone to mute it. Okay, Debra, you can come back. That wasn't you. Chris, would you mute your microphone, please? Okay, it's not Chris. Denny, I'm just reaching out to our network engineer. Denny, the feedback is coming on your cell line. Ah, there it goes.
All right. We're back. Okay, beautiful. This is outstanding. So, do we have a for Debra?
I did it already.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got so confused. All the feedback. I apologize. But anyway, Debra, I just want to say thank you for being here tonight. This is our premiere show on DTM with the radio. We've been doing second place for 4 years. Victor and myself for 2 years together. And we just came over from another network, and you are our first guest, and we're so happy to have you here with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Victor, why don't you start off?
So, Debra, here's the question of the night. When did you realize that you had psychic ability?
Well, I'll tell you, I was born with them, and of course, I didn't really remember using them in any way until I was probably 5 or 6. I would have dreams and remember the dreams. And at one point, I had asked my parents to, tell Santa Claus that I wanted a certain doll who had hair that grew from short to long. Well, there was no such thing back in those days. And apparently they thought that I had watched it on our area TV show from the Cleveland area here in Ohio. And Santa Claus went out looking for that doll and couldn't make the doll himself, apparently, for the children listening. And, there was no such doll. So a couple years later, finally that doll came into being, but it was as though, I had those kind of clairvoyant images as a child, and of course, as a child, you're going to think of childish things like a doll, So that was the first time I really realized later, and my mom explained to me that, that kind of thing had been going on. And of course, my mother and her side were very, very psychic people, very religious though, and they didn't believe in, hanging out the psychic shingle or anything. They accepted that as kind of one of God's gifts. They were very hardcore Protestant sect of religion. And, they just kind of almost like a shameful thing. We didn't really talk about it much. Had a spooky grandma who would tell you, don't go here today. And if you did, the one time that my father did, we had a terrible wreck, and that sort of thing is how it all started for me.
So it does run in your family. We find that quite often that in people who are naturally empathic and naturally psychic, that it does run in family, usually on the maternal side, running from grandmother to daughter to granddaughter. But for example, in my family, it actually started with my grandfather, to me, and then to skip my father's generation, and then to my daughter. I just wanted to know, you mentioned clairvoyance. Do you have any of the other clairs, clairsentience, clairaudience, any of those?
Well, actually mine does, it comes in dreams. It comes in, if I close my eyes, I get a picture sometimes behind my eyes. If you look at the outline of a window, when light's coming in, you get the shape of the window when you close your eyes, the square. Well, if I close my eyes and ask to be shown something for a particular person, sometimes the light kind of comes together and forms. It could be anything from, a bicycle to, a lump somewhere on their body. And there have been things like that, different diagnoses that have come through for someone, medically, that, I've always been able to figure out what I was seeing, even if I, didn't take any kind of courses on medical stuff, But that's how it works for me, and that's one of the things I see. And then I get a little voice that whispers in my head, a lot of times a name for someone or someone coming through. I do not have what many psychics consider, the intermediary, person that comes to them and tells them information. I don't have that. I just have something that's picking up things from wherever, the beyond, or whatever you want to look at it as. That's kind of the way it works for me.
Well, Debra, I'm curious. You say you get pictures when you close your eyes and you hear a voice every now and then. Do you ever see or hear things that frighten you, that you almost things that you don't want to see? And if you do, how do you deal with that? And I ask this question because, in my psychic development class, I'll always get the question, Chris, when I get a vision, it's always bad. And they don't know how to deal with it. So I want to know if you get visions that frighten you sometimes, and what do you do to deal with it?
I have gotten some bad visions, but it almost seems as though the reason I get these, if I get something like this, is when I'm asking for it directly. And so I'm kind of waiting for whatever comes. I try not to interpret it. I've found, I don't know about you guys, but I have found that, the ego wants to interpret everything, of course, and we don't want to look foolish and stupid. We don't want to look wrong. So I have a tendency to, my own imagination will step in and say, well, that's a lump. That must mean this person's got, a possibility of cancer or something growing in that area, and it's a warning for them. I try to do the interpretation, but, you have to learn, for me, I've had to learn to shut that part off so that I don't, try to, insert things that are totally my own imagination of what that is supposed to be about. And I've found that giving it to the person and telling the person and letting them decide what that means to them is the best way. As far as anything really negative, I've had a few dreams. I'll be honest with you. I've had some really bad dreams about this Ebola thing going on. I've had a really great concern about it because of those. And, I take them as a warning. And I just think it's all for the greater good, and we're supposed to take these as warnings. And what I do with them is warn who can be warned and just try to live with it as best I can.
All right, and I'm curious, how does your friends and family react? I know my friends and family, in the beginning, they wanted to send me to a psychiatrist, but then as I got older, everybody really supported me. How was it for you? How did your friends and family react?
Well, I've had a lot of friends that have had, things come up, that things have been shown to me for them, and so they're the ones that are, they're all for it. But because of my upbringing, I've gone back and forth. I had that strict religious upbringing, and it's you're dealing with biblical things where okay, you feel like you're either possessed or it's something evil, something from the dark side. And so I've gone back and forth my whole life with this until I finally got to the point where I believe. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian, so I'm a believer in good and evil. Represented by God and demonic. So, I just take that as, I just have to try to deal with it and try not to let it overwhelm me to that point. And that's kind of where I come from on that stuff. My friends understand that. They accept me as I am. I would never try to push my religion or anything down anyone else's throats, of course, but they also understand that so many things have happened like that have come true, that I've been, accurate about, that they believe in it and they like it. But I mean, it is a learning process. I mean, I believe we all that have anything like this really go through a lot of self-torment trying to figure it out.
Oh, that's so true. Now, you mentioned, friends supporting you for what you do. Now, what happens when you get visions or psychic, anything psychic to your friends? Do you always tell them? And I ask this because I've lost friends because of my psychic ability. And I've never just gone up to a friend and started reading them, ever. But I've had friends who ask me questions, and I'm very reluctant to answer them because there are times I've said things to them that they didn't appreciate, that they didn't like. And they leave the friendship. We're not friends anymore. Only for 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, they come to me and say, what you told me about that guy was 100% true. I'm sorry I was so mean to you when you told me that.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you? And I've gotten to the point where I don't outwardly read my friends, but when I talk to them, I kind of give them psychic, how do I want to put it? I kind of give them a reading without them realizing it. This way, it kind of keeps me out of the whole loop. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So what do you do about that? What do you do with your friends?
I get friends. What they do is they'll actually come to me and ask for it. I don't push anything on anyone. I try not to even. I kind of avoid it, to be honest with you. I guess that my books are kind of based on the whole reluctant psychic thing, because it's like, okay, when you get something like this, you don't necessarily want it, okay, and you learn how to deal with it eventually, and it's just kind of an ongoing thing. But friends, I can understand losing friends over that. It's a very frightening thing at times that you can know something that's going to happen, or something comes to you nobody understands, okay, where's this coming from? Those that are religious, is this coming from God? Is this coming from, you know what I mean? They're all like worried about where it's coming from. After it comes true a few times, there's a whole different ball of wax going on there, because they're really terrified. They're terrified in a way, but yet they want to know. And, there's a part of me that worries about being trivializing a gift like that, to be honest with you. So I deal with that too. It's like, geez, I'm a ball of torment half the time.
I hear. I'd like to share a quick story with you guys, if you don't mind. And new listeners to Second Sight on BPM, get used to this, because Victor and I will share a big part of our lives on this show. We hold nothing back, and so you should absolutely get used to this. I have a friend who's been my friend for over 30 years, and she's one of the dearest and most closest people in my life. And I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, we were out at a bar, and she started dating this guy, and she asked me, what can you tell me about it? And I'm like, well, I said, I really don't want to do this, and, the drinking and shooting, I really don't like to do any kind of psychic work while I'm drinking, and, it's not ethical, and it's not the right thing to do. She said, oh, please, just give me something. And I said, all right, go to the bathroom, and I'll see what I can get. So she walked to the bathroom, and I just sat there with him for a minute, and I knew that he had cheated on her, okay? And I knew that he had given her an STD. So when she came back, I told her, I said, listen, are you sure you want me to tell you what I pick up? She says, absolutely. I said, you're not going to get mad at me? She said, I would never get mad at you. You've been my best friend for as long as we've known each other since we're 8 years old. And I said, all right. And I told her, I said, I feel like he's cheated on you and that he's given you an STD. With that, she threw a beer in my face, told me to get the F away from her and to never speak to her again. 3 months later, she called me up and said, Chris, what you said was absolutely true, and I'm sorry I threw the beer in your face. And, of course, I forgave her because she's my best friend, but that's just an instance where, and that's one of the reasons why I just don't do it anymore, because I feel like, if you ask me a question and I get it, I have to give it to you the way it comes in. I'll give it to you as nicely as I can, and I'm going to give it to you. And it's backfired on me before.
Right. Yeah, that's a rough one right there, because the thing is most of the people, most of my friends being women, a lot of their questions are relationship oriented.
Right.
So, that causes, a whole other can of worms. I mean, there have been times that I've had one particular lady I'm thinking of, and I'm not going to say any names, but she lost a spouse. And I had seen that before I knew her, and she was just on a list of people. I just asked for first names, and then I just kind of do a quick look-see and close my eyes and see what comes up for them. Well, I saw a picture of this. I mean, it was the craziest thing. It was a green weenie, okay? That's the only way I can
Wait a minute. Was this an alien, Debra?
I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to write it down because, like I said, I try not to let my own ego say, okay, you're not telling anybody that because you're going to look like a complete, asshat or whatever. So I just wrote it down when I got to her and came to her name, and she came in. What I will do is friends will sometimes have a reading party at their house for palmistry or whatever, and then I will, ask for the first names of the people coming and then go to their home and then, do a little reading in advance for each first name. And then when they come in, I tell them what I had seen for them, okay? So when this girl comes in, I said, well, I told her a couple other things that came in, a couple of names, and finally then I got to the green weenie, and I thought, I don't know how to say this. How are you going to say this, It was a large, erect green weenie, okay?
Hey, Debra, could it possibly have been a leprechaun?
I thought, this is, that's something. I thought, I went in all directions on this, thinking, okay, my own crazy imagination, of course, is the first thing, you wanted to shut it down because of that, So I said, okay, I'm just going to say something. I said, now, there's the phrase, and I thought, okay, I will just say the phrase. I won't tell about the picture that I saw, all right? So I said, all right, does the phrase green weenie mean anything to you? And, of course, she put her hands to her mouth and started bursting into tears. And I thought, oh, no, I don't know what this is about, but I thought it was outrageous enough. But hers is apparently in some other direction, you know. And so she leaned down, she rolled up the leg of her jeans and showed me a picture of a green guitar tattooed on her leg. And I had never met this woman before. And here it turns out that her husband had just been diagnosed with cancer. He went in with a back problem, perfectly healthy, you know, he thought, and found out he had cancer all through him, and he was dead within 6 months. And he was a musician, and he had a green guitar that was his favorite, and he called it the Green Weenie.
Wow.
So I had no idea what was going on, but then, see, I wasn't supposed to. And I said, now, let me ask you something. Did he have an outrageous sense of humor? She said, oh, absolutely, dirty. And, you know, I said, okay, well, then that's probably the way he would have showed it to me, because how else could I have understood it, you know?
Yeah, that's what you listen. I've heard of Blue Bolt, but never a green weenie. But, unbelievable.
But she's a good case right there in point, that she asked me, you know, she grieved for quite a long time, a couple years, and then she came back one night, and I'm also a professional musician, so I was at work one night at one of the places in the town where she lived, and she knew that from my calendar, and she came out to see me and talk to me, and she said, I've got a new guy with me. Can you tell me what you think of him? And I hate that, you know. I really hate that, because I don't want to lie if I don't feel something good about him, you know. And I went over and shook the guy's hand, and oh, man, I just got a bad vibe. The whole thing was just not good, you know. And I just said, well, I told her sister-in-law, her ex-sister-in-law from the husband that had passed away, I said, I don't want to tell her, but something's wrong with this guy. And they went on for a long time. I just said, oh, he seems okay. I didn't even actually kind of lied about it, because I didn't know exactly what it was. It was just a really bad vibe, you know. And so I didn't say much about it, and then it turns out that he turned into a stalker and, like, all kind of terrible things, and she got rid of him, and she is now with somebody good, and they just got married. So, yeah, you know, you just don't want to say much sometimes, because you don't want to hurt feelings, and you don't want to, you know, and you always have that little bit of doubt. You know, I always do anyway. You know, I'm never quite certain. I mean, a lot of things come through that seem really accurate and have been very accurate, but, you know, you got to be humble about it, and you've got to realize sometimes things are wrong. You know, sometimes you've interpreted it in the wrong way. So, but yeah, I understand your story, because the same thing I was afraid to tell her, that the guy has something skeezy going on there, you know.
Debra, did you ever have a situation? Oh, I'm getting feedback now. Who's that coming through? Chris, is that coming through you? You hear the feedback?
I heard it, but I don't hear it anymore.
Debra, do you hear echoing?
No, it's not on my end.
Okay, all righty. What I was going to ask, do you ever have a situation, well, let me rephrase this. You had mentioned before that you talked about your gifts, and then you said that you feel that they are directed, that you really don't have a guide per se. But did you ever have a sense or a feeling that there was someone or something that was helping you in the path?
You know, I guess on my end, what I feel like, I just feel like it's, you know, the light or God or whatever, however you look at that sort of thing. I just feel like it's, you know, just a higher power, and for some reason it's just been given to me, maybe because I accepted it from a younger age as normal. You know, just, I'm not sure why. There's so much more about it that I don't understand than I do, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you feel also that you're empathic? Do you feel in addition to see and hear?
Yes, absolutely. I can, you know, walk into a room. In fact, this happens when I'm at my music performances. Sometimes you can basically, the way I describe it is, you can walk into a room and you can feel something's wrong somewhere, and it's an awful feeling of warning all the time, and it could be, but it doesn't tell you what the warning is sometimes, and it could be, you know, this guy over here in the corner had a fight with his wife, or he's a serial killer. You know, you can't tell the difference. The intensity of the warning is always there. That it's the same level for me. It never kind of backs down. It's just like, uh-oh, something's wrong, and I'm looking around trying to pinpoint what it is. So it's you know, makes you nervous, and you know, I probably need some Valium once in a while, but basically, you know, you learn to kind of turn it down as much as you can, and you never completely shut it off. I don't know if that's been your experience as well, Chris.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, you know, Debra, you're a clairvoyant, you're a clairsentient, you're clairaudient. We call someone who has all the clairs an éclair. So welcome to the éclair club.
Okay.
You know, you referred to yourself as a reluctant psychic, and you sort of touched a little bit on it before. Where does the reluctance come from?
Well, it really does stem from the religious upbringing and from not knowing whether or not from which side does this come. And finally I just got to the point where it just, it's so ridiculous to constantly walk around worried like that and to live with that kind of stress that I just decided it is for the good, and I will try to use it for the good as much as possible. I do kind of avoid it, like you were saying, Chris, and I kind of avoid, I don't go out and, do readings all the time. Like, I had been recruited by California Psychics, and I worked for them for a while, all that stuff. But, I just really kind of, I just got out of all that, and I just kind of try to do it as it comes. If there's a warning from someone or somebody that really needs help, or I will delve into it again. But the reason that really comes from, too, is that I feel it attracts a lot of negative things to you. And this may be, my own take on it. But I think that it attracts negative things, and I'm afraid that I attracted some negative into my life to the point where I lost my son and my father and had a lot of really traumatic, horrendous things happen, and that's kind of what started me on writing books. I just kind of wrote that whole story down. So that's kind of where my issues come from with using it at all.
You talk about reluctance, and you fortunately came from a family where this was an accepted thing. A lot of us don't. When I was a child, my closest ally in terms of this work was my grandfather, who was a mystic, but my parents had absolutely no connection or belief in it. And until one day, when I was around 7 years old, and I was in my parents' apartment in Brooklyn, New York, and my grandfather materialized in front of me with a big smile on his face, lingered for a few seconds, and then disappeared. And I went into the living room, and I told my mother and father, Grandpa was just here. And they said, oh, you're imagining things again. I was one of those kids who was labeled as having an overactive imagination. Yeah. And a few minutes later, the phone rang. It was my grandmother saying my grandfather had just transitioned. So that was my first conscious experience of it. But it was very difficult because, again, other than my grandfather, I didn't have a confidant as a child that I could really discuss this with. And when my daughter showed that she was also open and aware and had all the gifts, I went out of my way to help her with that. And I think a lot of the parents of children who do that, you really have to extend yourself and help those kids to understand what their gifts are and how to use them properly.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing with your grandfather coming right to you like that. That's fabulous.
Had a very strong connection with him. And it's 8:30 Eastern Time, and we just want to say that you're listening to Second Sight Radio on its new home, the DTM Wicked Radio Network. Our special guest tonight is Debra Robinson. She's the author of The Dead Are Watching, Ghost Stories from a Reluctant Psychic. And Debra, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your services.
Okay, you can get both my books. The first one is titled A Haunted Life, The True Ghost Story of a Reluctant Psychic, and this one that was just released is The Dead Are Watching. And both of those are in the Barnes & Nobles and Books A Millions, and you can get them at Amazon, and just pretty much everywhere.
And as we say every week, we support our local bookstores, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and they're all wonderful. But, in your community, there's a local bookstore, and that local bookstore depends on people walking in and browsing and buying books. And go down to your local bookstore tomorrow morning, folks, and say, I want a copy of The Dead Are Watching by Debra Robinson. If they say, we don't have it, you say, you better order it for me because I want to buy it from you and support the local economy. Right, Chris?
Absolutely. Absolutely, my friend. Now, Debra, I have a question for you, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. I hope you don't mind, and if you want to, give me a verbal smackdown after this, you can. But I want to know, what do you pick up when you speak to Victor and I? Is there anything that comes to you about either one of us or both of us as you speak with us psychically?
I have had a couple names whispering to me all day, and I don't know if this is sometimes this is just random stuff and I can never really tell, but I am getting someone by the name. It's a woman with blondish hair, like mid-40s, and it seems like her name is Paula. And I'm also getting someone named Alan. who shows a picture of a bike, and I'm not sure what that has to do with anything either. I'm also... Go ahead.
No, please, you continue, and then I'll answer you.
Oh, okay. For you, think I'm seeing basically there's some sort of a sneaky situation that you have come through. I don't know you, so I'm not exactly certain what's going on with that, but it's kind of a situation where something had to be hidden from you, and it turned out to upset you pretty badly. And this could be in the past. I'm not really certain about that either. I'm also seeing that right now that there are a lot of good things going on compared to when that happened. That's pretty much what I'm picking up for you.
And that's pretty interesting. I mean, that could be one of two things for me, actually, because what you're picking up about the anger could actually be a friend of mine. But the sneaky thing, what I feel it might be, and Victor, I'd like your opinion on this. Do you think it has something to do with the situation we just left?
I think so, without going into details, because this is past history and we're leaving history behind.
I just want to give a confirmation is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I just want to say that our departure from our former network was because of some underhanded activity that was taking place.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing like a really bad, kind of stabbing in the back type situation is what I'm seeing, and underhandedness of some kind. So that's kind of like...
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
That's actually very accurate.
Yeah.
And now I know when you were saying the name Alan, I think that was for Victor, but I have to tell you, I had a friend when I was, I want to say 14 years old, and his name was Alan, and he had passed away, and that might be who you were picking up on. So I just have to give you...
It wasn't on, was it? Wasn't on a bike?
It was on a bike. He actually got hit by a tow truck, and he was on his bike, and you are absolutely right. That's him.
That's him. I'm getting that feeling. It's him. Just like confirmed that's him trying to say hi to you.
Very cool. That's outstanding. Thank you. All right. Well, now let's go on to the next question. I want to know: would you call yourself a medium?
I don't call myself a medium because I'm not really sure what a medium is, to be quite honest with you. The way it comes to me is so different, and I feel like I don't fit in with other psychics well because I'm too Christian for the psychic world, and I'm too psychic for the Christian world. I'm like stuck in the middle somewhere, so I'm just doing my own thing, trying to go through day by day, and I'm not sure, exactly what's going on. To be quite honest with you, I am the first to admit and I've had this all my life, and I'm going in middle age, and here I am. I still don't really understand it. So, you guys can teach me.
Well, no, there's much to be taught there, but I have to say, being Christian, I know how the Catholic Church feels about psychics. I've been called the white devil by a very Catholic woman before because I talk to dead people. Do you have anything like that happening to you because you're Christian?
I just completely almost stay away from the whole thing, to be honest with you. I feel that I'm a spiritual person and very close to God myself. I feel, and I'm not Catholic, but I think the Catholics have it down in some ways. I think they have it down psychologically because they allow you to go in and confess your sins and that sort of thing. I think that's a great psychological advantage to that particular religion. Us in the Protestant side, my grandparents, great-grandparents were Quakers, so you can imagine it's almost like being Amish as you come down through. I mean, Amish is what everyone has heard of. Quakers is, very, very much the same Protestant extreme sect, of Protestantism. But you get that same guilt. I'm raised, by the time I came around, they had developed into Nazarenes, and, they still couldn't wear makeup. They didn't have jewelry. They didn't go to dances. They didn't do any of that stuff. By the time I came along, my parents had lightened up a little bit, but I still have all that guilt, all that Catholic guilt. I've had so many Catholics tell me that. And whenever I lost my son, he was killed by a drunk driver 5 years ago. And then my father, shortly afterwards, committed suicide. And I thought I brought something dark in. And that's why I started writing, to keep my sanity, to be quite honest, to keep myself still here in the game. And I went to a Catholic priest because I wanted to get some information. And he said, this is scary stuff. And I said, well, from what I understand and the research that I've done, it can't be from the dark side. It can't be from the dark side because supposedly demonic does not know the future. That's what I was told by Catholics. It can't know the future. Only God knows the future. And that's the first time I was finally able to tell myself, listen, this is coming from God. The things that are accurate like that are coming from God. I had to tell myself that to be able to continue to go on. Although I finally realized that just by, having a gift like this, if you are a person who has been giving a special gifts from God or whatever you believe in that way, you're going to be extremely hated by the opposite side because you're even more so, a godlike person in their eyes. And so that's kind of the way I started looking at that. Maybe I did bring something in. So my own guilt from the religion, really dumped on me with the deaths of, the two people in my life I loved the most. So, I'm still figuring it all out. And it's been 5 years, and I'm still figuring it all out.
Debra, I'm going to share something with you. I got onto this path actively about 30 years ago. And at the time, I also had some concerns about whether I was doing something that was in violation in God's eyes. And I met a wonderful, wise woman. She was in her late 80s at the time, and she used to hold spiritual circles. And she knew of my concern about what I was doing, and she called me over one night. She said, let me share something with you. And I'll never forget this, and this is probably one of the best pieces of advice or best things anyone ever told me. She said, God does not require us to be holy, but God would love us to be whole. God does not require us to be holy. God would love us to be whole. And by being whole, she meant embracing everything that we brought into this world and recognizing that these were gifts from God and nothing evil, nothing negative, and that if we go through life with these gifts, acknowledging them, keeping them whole, and doing the work with compassion and with love, then we'll fulfill exactly what God
wants. The guilt and wanting to be good and do good and use a gift, But I don't know. I just, that's a great advice. I believe that we are supposed to use what we're given. And that's kind of where I've come, basically, to understand that I need to help those that I can help. Because if you had a gift like this and did not help people with it, I would think there would be more problems with that than being afraid to use it.
Absolutely.
I'm curious. When did you have your first paranormal experience?
Let's see. The one I can remember is the dream I told you about, the little doll with the hair that grew. I think they called it Tressie or something back in those days. But that's the first one I remember. But, I mean, my mom and my grandma, they were, like, scary almost, to the point where, my grandma, we'd go to her house, and she had 8 children, so that we all gathered in the kitchen on Sundays and would, sit around and talk to the aunts and uncles, and she would say, I had the dream last night, and everyone would go still. And, of course, as kids, when we were little, we didn't know what the heck she's talking about. And finally we came to understand it was a dream she would have before somebody died every time. She would dream of this big white bird coming through a window. And so then by the time I got old enough to understand, everyone's eyes would, like, pop out of their head and wait to hear what she's going to say. And within 3 or 4 days, almost absolutely every single time that I can remember, we'd get word that someone died. Usually it was a relative we didn't know, somebody, farther off, and that was good. But, I mean, we would look back and forth to each other, and as kids, we could grow up with that sort of thing. It just becomes like, all right, they don't talk about it, and they act like they're embarrassed of it, but it's accurate, and it's for real, and it's scary. So you kind of just grow up knowing it, and you start listening to your own version of it. That's kind of where I came into that.
Well, I'd like to know, you get these visions, and some big things happen. Was there ever a point in your psychic life that you wanted to shut it off? Because I know for me, years ago, there was a time where I really wanted to shut the whole psychic part of me down. And I went to my mentor, who's this phenomenal lady here where I live, and she said to me, I'll never forget, she said, you know what, Chris, I can help you shut it down, but what if you can't open it up again? And I said, well, maybe that's what I want. And she said, you know what, Chris, who's the most important person in your life right now? And I said, it's my father. She said, one day he's not going to be here, and you're going to want to be able to connect with him. and it would be a shame if you couldn't. You're so good at doing it now, why would you want to shut it down? You can learn to control it instead of shutting it down. And that's exactly what I did. I learned to control it because the thought of not being able to speak to my father when he passed, just it scared the hell out of me. And ironically, like 2 years later, my dad passed away, and I've had many, many conversations with him. But what about you? Was there ever a time you wanted to shut it down?
Yeah, and it still happens occasionally. The deal is here, I'm in the middle of nowhere in the Bible Belt, and there were no mentors. There was nothing. There were books that I could, read whenever I was growing up, and that's the only way I learned that there were, other people dealing with this. And, I would read the Hans Holzer books and the Llewellyn books, which turned out to be my publisher, which is cool, too, because I kind of grew up on those, And that's the only thing I had. So all I had was a lot of fear, what the religion told me, and trying to figure it out on my own. And I guess that cultivated this whole attitude of fear. And I understand I'm kind of like in the minority on that. Most psychics are very, love, peace, and all this. But mine had a healthy dose of fear. And then when I was about 12 years old, I asked for a Ouija board for Christmas. Of course, we didn't really know it could sometimes open a door to something else. And all hell broke loose in the house. And I had like a poltergeist experience there for 3 years that focused on me. And that's really where the fear really came from. And that's what started me on investigating this whole thing and trying to figure out, where my place in it, where my part in it came from.
I can share with you the fact that I was never, Chris, a few of my friends look at me when I say this. I was never afraid of any of these things. There was no fear in me whatsoever. In fact, I often say I fear the living more than I fear 100 times more than I would ever fear the dead. But so shutting this down was never something that I had to think about. I sort of have an intention switch built into my head. And if I'm involved in something and don't want to get in touch with spirit or disincarnate, I simply say I'm unavailable right now. It's like hanging up the shoe and saying out to lunch. My daughter, on the other hand, was born wide open. And in her case, she had a lot of difficulty with it because a lot of things would show up for her simultaneously. And it took me a while, but I was able to teach her how to create the intention switch because, let's face it, all of this is energy. They're all forms of energy. And the energy can be switched on and switched off. So once she understood that she had the God-given right to use that switch to turn it on or turn it off, it changed her life completely, and she was able to better deal with it. And that's what I would teach to anyone who has an issue with the energy coming to them constantly, is that we have the ability within us to say, not now, thank you, respectfully and lovingly, not now, later when I'm ready for you.
Yes, that's great. I have gotten to the point where I guess I will just, say my little prayer or whatever if I feel the fear taking over when something starts. Because I feel like the way you just described that is a really great description. I feel like the same way, like bombarded from all sides. I run a fan in my room at night because I hear these little voices, not every night, but I mean most of the time.
White noise.
All the time. I don't want to hear them, I want to sleep. I don't want to be, so yeah, I could use your teachings there, Victor, to show me how to shut this off a little better.
And it's funny because whenever I see these television shows with paranormal teams that use this antagonistic approach to trying to connect with spirit and make them appear to do things, it really upsets me because disincarnate were human beings. They were alive, living people with feelings. And just because they're not in body anymore doesn't mean they still don't have feelings. And I believe in respect. And if you work with respect and respectfully say, I acknowledge you, I see that you're there, but this is my time for sleep, or this is my time to relax, or this is my time to eat, or whatever it might be, please acknowledge that, please allow me to enjoy my life at this point, and I will communicate with you at some time later. If you do that, if you do it with love, you do it with respect, I believe you can control all these connections.
Well, I'd like to follow up, Vic, on talking about fear a little bit. For me, it was it was a little bit weird because when I was younger and it first started with me, I wasn't scared. What I was scared of was people finding me out. Were my friends realizing that I was seeing spirits. That scared me because I was the cool kid. And the cool kid don't see spirits. You can't be, somebody who people really liked back then and talk about seeing dead people. for me, when the fear only lasted a little while was maybe 15 years ago when Spirit finally came back to me and made themselves known to me. When I was in my living room and I fell asleep watching Sports Center, I woke up at 2 in the morning. There were like 15 of them standing in front of me. That scared me because I wasn't expecting it, you know.
Yeah.
And after that happened like 2 or 3 times, the fear went away, and then the interest kind of got peaked. And I was like, okay, you're here. What do you want? You know, and when they said, we want to teach you, you know, you've lived your life up to this point. Everything you've done, you've been good at, but it's never worked out for you. Now let us teach you who and what you really are. And from that point forward, there was never ever fear ever again, because I allowed them. I went down my basement and I allowed Spirit to teach me how to ground myself, to teach me how to see auras and feel energy and channel and meditate and cleanse myself. And there was never fear after that. And like I said, the biggest fear for me was being found out.
And so you are, in essence, taking control of it is what you're doing by doing that. You know, you just take control, you show them this is what I do, you know, this is what you do. And part of it is that my boundaries are so loose that I've had to work on that, to pull back from being so open and so, you know, all over the place.
Exactly.
That's an issue with me and the rest of my life as well, and many times. Very empathetic to everyone that's going through something, and I just have to learn to, you know, pull back somewhat, and I'm still working on that. I think it's a lifelong thing when you're like I am, at least. So it's a lifetime learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. It comes from experience. It really does. You know, I'm 61, and it took me, like I said, 30 years ago is when I really reactivated and went back on this path. And even today, you know, anyone who says they know it all knows nothing, because you never stop learning.
Yeah.
Every day is a new experience. Every day is a new way of appreciating these gifts and working with them in whatever faculties you have them developed in. So just don't shut yourself down. Just keep going with the flow. And each time you learn something, you know, I have a habit of journaling. I like to write things down when I find something that really reflects for me, because I have, at my age, I start forgetting things very easily. So I take out a notebook and I just start making notes. You know, today I did this and this was the effect. And that way you have a running dialogue with yourself. And as you develop this dialogue, the tools become second nature to you.
Great idea. You know, you spoke about boundaries, and I'd like to just follow up on that a bit, because my mentor taught me, you know, when I wanted to shut it off, she said, you know, you have to learn to control it. And she used the word boundaries often with me. And she said, you have to talk to Spirit. You have to be very respectful but strong with them, and let them know that when you're on, you're on. And when you're off, you know what, you got to step back, unless it's very important. So it's very important to make boundaries. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. And what I find is a lot of the older psychics, they never learned that. You know, I don't think anybody ever taught them that when they were going through it, and they're always open. And what happens with a lot of these older psychics is they live their life psychically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that comes back to haunt them, because at some point they don't know the difference between spirit and what's real, and they wind up getting a little bit loopy. Now, I know some of the older psychics might get a little bit upset at that, but I'm in the psychic community, and I'm around a lot of psychics, and I see it. I see it with my own mentor, who's an amazing, amazing psychic. But you know what? She never shuts it down. Even though she taught me to shut it down, she never shuts herself down, and she paid the price for it over the years. So I think it's very important to set those boundaries and keep them. And, you know, if you're going to live your life psychically, I truly believe that as you get older, it comes back to bite you in the ass. That's just my opinion. Rick, I would love to hear your opinion on that.
You know what, Chris? It's a funny thing that you say that. I've always lived with the intent that I'm going to allow spirit to be in my life constantly. And it's not a religious approach that I'm taking. I'm just talking about this energy of spirit that once I allowed it to flow through my life changed for the better. I can't tell you how the last 30 years have changed my life and brought me such joy and such fulfillment and such love and just really just turned my life around, because my first 30 years were concentrated on something totally different, has made my life so much better and given me a deeper appreciation for everything and everyone, because sometimes if you don't open to this energy, it shuts you down to gratitude. And I am so grateful for everything that's happened in my life.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at that too. I mean, the gratitude. I am so grateful to still be here and walking around every day, and for the gifts I've been given. But I mean, there was a time when all this happened to me 5 years ago that I wanted to leave. I wanted to go. I had so much rage against the woman that killed my son that I literally could totally understand how other people can go kill somebody. I totally got it. And, I am not that type of person. And it really changed me. It changed me in ways that probably I needed. That was maybe my path, and that was his time to go, and everything is, as it was supposed to be. And yet I guess I just, I just wasn't expecting it. And I had to give up control, which I'm kind of a control freak, and that's part of it. And my path needed to be, you have to learn you can't control anything. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's what I had to go through. And I'm just grateful that I came out the other side of it all.
Deborah, one of the gifts that each of us has been given is that wonderful teachers have come into our lives at the exact right moment. It's what I call synchronicity. They say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. The Celestine prophecy talked about when you're ready, when you're on that path and you're open to getting the messages and getting the information that you need to pursue your life, it'll come to you. And I had the privilege and pleasure and wonder of an amazing teacher. He was a man who founded an interfaith seminary in 1982, long before anyone talked about the interfaith movement. He had been born into an Orthodox Jewish family and recognized after his family was killed in the Holocaust that he had a different purpose in life. And he became a yogi, and he became an interfaith rabbi, and he embraced and respected and more than tolerated, he learned to love every religion as the source religion, because he recognized that the books may be different, the teachings may be different,
yes,
the visions of God may be different, but ultimately it all goes to the same and comes from the same source. In any event, like I said, he had lost his entire family in the Holocaust. And here's a guy who could have been absolutely bitter, filled with hatred, filled with anger, and he wasn't. He said, I can never forgive what they did to my family. He says, but I will not hate them. He says, because hatred is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. Hatred kills us, it doesn't kill the other. And then he said something which had a profound effect in my life and actually helped me deal with the tremendous personal loss that I had in 1998. He said, there's an ancient Hebrew expression, Hakol Beseda, which literally translated means from chaos order. But what he said the real meaning is, he says, everything is unfolding according to a divine plan. We may not see it, we may not recognize it, we may hate it, we may not like it at all, but ultimately, if you stand back and look at the bigger picture, everything happens for a reason. When I lost someone that was very, very dear to me, someone who changed my life and filled my life with love, if I hadn't been grounded in that concept that there was a reason for everything happening, I think I would have probably gone crazy. And, stepping back and at the time that it happens when we lose someone, especially someone that we love deeply, the sense of it doesn't seem to be there. But when you step back and look at things, this woman who had come into my life at a time when I needed to be loved and I needed to love someone and share that part of my life with someone who just was totally dedicated to loving me and I'm loving her, and then to lose her, when I step back and look at that, without that experience, without that love, without that portion of my life, I would not be the person that I am today. And so I recognize that. I'm grateful for that time that we had together, and I understand that it was her time to move on. Her purpose in life was fulfilled, and I'm just filled with gratitude for having that time with her. And I couldn't have gone on in my life and become the person that I am today without that experience. And so I know what the pain is of losing someone like that. Losing a child, I actually had lost children in my first marriage. So losing a child is something that no one who has not had the experience could ever think about or rationalize, and there's nothing you can say to someone who's lost a child. But ultimately, again, if we step back and look, there's a higher purpose at work in everything.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
Her name wasn't Loretta or Paula, was it?
No, it wasn't. No.
I've been getting both of those.
No.
You talk about having a hard time getting rid of the hatred that you had for the person who killed your child. What I learned is through spirit. I felt like my life was not going where it needed to go psychically, and I was ready to give up. I was ready to stop the whole psychic paranormal part of my life, give it up completely. And I remember feeling really, really bad about myself because of that. And I'm driving, and I'm not one of these guys that get very emotional or whatever. But I pulled over to the side of the road, and I remember feeling like I wanted to cry. And I said out loud to my spirit guide, when are you going to give me a sign? You give me all these messages to give to people. When do I get my sign? When am I going to know that things would be okay for me? And Spirit tells me, and I'll never forget it, it says to progress in the future, you have to make peace with your past. And I said, well, why are you telling me riddles, And this is how I speak to Spirit. I speak to him like I'm talking to you guys right now. I said, why are you talking to me in riddles? Tell me what you want to say. And again, my Spirit guide said to me, to progress in your future, you have to make peace with your past. And I said, well, what the hell does that mean? I mean, what does it mean? What do I have to make peace with? And he said to me, only you know what that is. And I sat there for a minute, and it was like somebody slapped me in the face and said, dummy, you know what it is. And I said, oh my God. Now I didn't lose a child like you did, but what I did lose was my cousin, my best friend. She was more of a sister to me than a cousin. She was like the closest person in my life, and forever, for my whole life. And what happened was we had a really bad falling out, and I thought she really did something bad, and she felt the same way towards me. And I said to them, I can't forgive her for this. They said, no, you can forgive her. You don't have to forget. You don't even ever have to speak to her again. But for you have to let go of what's holding you down, and this is what's holding you down. I called her up, and I said, Louisa, I said, I forgive you for anything I feel you did to me. And I'm asking you to please forgive me for everything you feel I did to you. And she says, Christopher, I forgive you. And I said, I forgive you too. We haven't spoken one day since then, and that was about 5 years ago, okay? But you know what? A weight came off me and allowed me to go on to do what I'm doing now in the psychic world and whatever. It was amazing. Absolutely. It was an amazing moment for me.
Absolutely. Listen, we're coming up on 9 o'clock, and I just want to say you're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network. Our guest tonight is Debra Robinson, author of The Dead Are Watching, Ghost Stories from a Reluctant Psychic. He's psychic medium Christopher George. I'm Victor the Voice Fuhrman. This is Second Sight Radio, and we will be back.
Okay, want a break?
Benny, we clear? Okay.
It's too easy never to forget. Believing lies and reservations pushed us far apart. Am I alone? Am I alone? Every day diminishing another dimmed piece of can see is yesterday's. It's so easy never to forget. Believing lies and reservations pushed us far apart. Am I alone? Am I alone? Every day finishing another dimmed piece of my own. Fallen years that keep coming back to me. Never thought we could lose so much. Wanting more when nothing changes. That held us far apart. Am I alone? Am I alone? Every day furnishing another dimmed piece of my heart. Dreaming of whispers ring, heavens and mirrors of someone.
The paranormal,
Ghosts,
spirits,
demons,
reincarnation,
past lives,
the afterlife,
divination,
exorcisms,
witchcraft.
the unseen.
He's psychic medium Chris George.
And he's Victor the Voice Fuhrman.
We are Second Sight Radio.
Chris George and Victor the Voice Fuhrman. Hour number one, we were speaking with psychic medium Debra Robinson, and the book is A Haunted Life, a true ghost story of a reluctant psychic. And I got to tell you, people, for our debut show here on VCM, Wicked Radio Second Sight is doing wonderful. I think it's a fantastic show. I think it's a fantastic guest, and I'm very happy that you guys are here listening to us tonight. What we normally do to start the second hour on Second Sight is something that we call the Church of Second Sight, and it could be anything from a rant, something that's pissing me off, to something really nice, to a poem that Victor's read. You never know what it's going to be. Now, believe me, with the week that I've had, there's a lot for me to rant about, but I won't do that. I won't do that because I think this is a happy night. You know, I want to talk a little bit about people, about being good to people. You know, something that Victor talks about all the time is, and I agree with him. I don't think it's going to ever happen, but I agree with him. He always says, you know, people would just be nice to each other, would show love towards each other, and not hate and not disrespect, and just be good to each other. You know, what a wonderful world this would be. And that's a fact. I mean, that goes without saying. That it's a simple statement, okay? But it's a hard thing to do, you know, because there's so much anger in the world and hate and trouble, and it's just hard to get past that sometimes. That being said, I want to reach out and let everyone know how happy I am to be here on DPM Wicked Radio. And what you have to understand is, Victor and I are coming from another network, and about 5 weeks ago now, we were given some news that we didn't like, and we felt very disrespected by it. Okay, I'm not going to go into it; it's irrelevant. But what is relevant is that we felt disrespected, and you know there was a bit of a sneaky thing going on. Whatever. Right after we got that news, right after our show, we got on Skype and we got the owner of DPM, which is Benny Gaging, came on Skype with us, and we asked him if he had a spot for Second Sight on DPM Wicked Radio. And without hesitation, the man said yes. Okay? Now, what you need to know is that there's another show that airs on DPM at the same time as us. But you know what? He took us anyway. And, you know, I have to say, to just instantly say yes to bring Victor and I to this network, it made me feel really good. Now, I don't know if you guys care if I feel good or not, and that, again, that's irrelevant. But we did feel good, Victor and I both. And the thing is, they're such good people. And they kind of are what Victor talked about all the time. They're nice people. They do the right thing. They show people respect. And in return, good things are happening for them. You know, they're getting great shows on the network. The network is growing by leaps and bounds every single week. More and more listeners are coming in. And that's a direct correlation to the way they treat people. Okay? And if everyone will just take a little bit of advice from the good psychic medium Chris George over here, follow their example. Follow Victor the Voice Fuhrman's example of just being nice to people all the time. And you will be so surprised at how good things start happening to you. It's taken me a long time to realize this because I have anger issues sometimes when people really annoy me. But you know what? I'm going to take a little piece of the Victor Fuhrman book and the Denny and Tiffany Gage book and just show gratitude more and try and be good to people more, which I feel like I am anyway. But I'm going to do it even more so. And my challenge to all of you is for you to do the same. Just treat people with a little bit of respect. And I promise you, they'll treat you with respect back. And if they don't, there's a little thing called editing. And you can edit your life. You can edit people out of your life. So keep the good people in your life. Be nice to people. Smile a little bit. A smile goes a long way. Victor, I know you didn't know I was going to talk about this tonight, but it's something that you talk about all the time, and I think it's important that you say something on this as well.
You know, it's, I don't know if you remember the old Glenn Campbell song, Try a Little Kindness. And if you try a little kindness, you'll overcome the blindness of narrow-minded people in the narrow-minded ways. And it's so true. If we can just be kind to each other. I'll tell you a quick story, Chris. Several years ago, had a friend whose husband had a difficult upbringing, and this man was not pleasant all the time. But we were friends, and we accepted him for the way he was. And we were at a dinner party one night, and there were about 6 of us around the table, and somebody mentioned something that was politically challenging to this gentleman that he disagreed with. And his insecurity and where he came from, rather than say I disagree with you or you're wrong or start some type of a debate, a sound debate, he stood up and started screaming at the top of his lungs at everybody at the table, "You're fools! You don't know what you're doing. This is all wrong!" And just really just went on this 15-minute rant. And then his wife was mortified. She looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Everybody else were turning their heads. And I let him finish, and then I got up. I walked around the table, and I threw my arms around him, and I said, "I love you anyway." And he started crying. And it began a healing process for him that changed his life completely. No one had ever done that before. Every time he went into a rant, people would just walk away or curse him out or leave him. And I instead went with compassion, changed the man's life.
Yeah, I mean, that says a lot right there. That says a lot about the person that you are as well, so... You know what? The person, I was not always this person. I was very angry when I was younger. The person who I am became who I am now started, like I said, about 30 years ago when a series of events changed my life and made me more appreciative and more loving and more caring. Well, I want to say one thing. When I first started doing the Church of Second Sight about, I don't know, I guess 4 years ago, I always used to end it with, "Can I get an amen?" And everyone in the chat room will give me an amen. And everyone that's at home listening, I hope, gives me an amen. So I'm going to go back to doing that, okay, because I like it. So listen, everybody. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
All right, well, let's start this interview again, Victor. How about you start it off?
Sure. So, Debra, when was your first, when did you join your first paranormal team or get involved with your first paranormal team?
Well, it actually hasn't been all that long ago. I was always interested in that, and of course, everyone watches the shows at various times that are on the television. My first real experience came when I probably about in the last 10 years when a good friend of mine, Brian Fain from Massillon Ghost Hunter Society in the county north of me here, Canton, Ohio. He was at an event, kind of a ghost hunt that I had gone to, and basically I just started getting all this information for him, and I didn't know him and hadn't met him, and I thought, well, you know, I'm here in this kind of a casual setting. I think I'll just tell this guy a few things. And so I walked over and introduced myself and just said hi because my friend was running the event. And Brian is one of these guys who's, you know, a total skeptic of the whole thing. Didn't believe in psychics because he'd only met the ones that were not really that psychic or whatever, were faking it or something. But he had some bad experiences there, you know. And he basically was just totally against the whole thing, very left brain, you know, show me type of person. You know, he wanted to see the evidence and wanted to see it all. I tried to explain to him as time went on, sometimes there are things that you cannot get evidence for. It's just they simply are what they are. You can't always pin it down, and does not mean they're not real. And, you know, he didn't want to believe that. And then after I told him a few things, and things progressed, he had called me a couple times on some cases and asked me, okay, I'm getting this problem on a case, and I just wanted to see over the phone if you had some ideas on that. And I gave him a couple names that I was getting, and he didn't even know the names, so I knew I wasn't just reading his thoughts. He went and looked his case file up and found out there were the names of the two women who had lived there in the 1800s that each had passed away in the house, and just some things like that that convinced him that there are things that you cannot quantify and, you know, do tests on all the time, you know. And that started me off right there, and he asked me to join the group, and I did. And we kind of went on from there, where I met some others and tried to help them whenever possible. I just kind of remember that there's a part in me that's still that 12-year-old who dealt with that horrible poltergeist event in my house, and I just was terrified and didn't know who to turn to, and those are the types that well, yes, and the thing is what it really comes down to is that some of the people, unfortunately, calling themselves psychic are not. They're trying to make a buck or whatever, and, you know, more power to them, but, I mean, that's just, we've all dealt with that, I'm sure. And this is what they've come up against too many times, and so now they believe that there are no such things. Well, you know, we all know that there are. We have it, so we've dealt with it, so we know that there are, but it's kind of like hen's teeth, like my grandma used to say. It is rare, you know, it's a rarer thing. There are more probably faking it than actually have it. So this is what I think all the teens are coming up against, and when they actually meet someone who's useful and who does get things right and who admits, listen, I can be wrong sometimes, those are the ones they think, maybe this one's for real, you know, and then it changes their outlook on that.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think we have some very exciting news that I'd like to share. You know, when we left the last network that we were on, we were averaging more than 800,000 listeners a week per show. And we actually capped 925,000. 965,000 on a couple of shows.
Wow.
Now, the counters here are maxed out at 100,000. They don't go higher than 100,000. But we know we have a minimum of 100,000 people listening to us tonight, and my guess is we're probably closer to the 800,000 that we were drawing every week. So, Danny and Tiff, we love you guys. We're doing it.
Fabulous.
Outstanding. So, no, where are we? I'm sorry, I got excited about the number, so...
Chris, you're at number 8, Chris, number 8.
Yeah. So I want to know what made you decide to write A Haunted Life?
Well, Chris, what really happened was, like I told you, the things that happened with my son being killed, and then he started coming back. And I'm not one of those psychics who, like, see spirits a lot. I've never had that. I used to see, back when I was 12 or 13 in that haunted house, you know, I would see out of the corner of my eye, I would see things or whatever. And so I've had the other parts of it and heard things and get the voices and see the visions and that stuff, but I've never really, seen, the figures like Victor described his grandfather, or like I'm sure you've had happen. And we all have different areas where we're more proficient, I guess, is what it is, or different gifts. But I've never really seen that. And so I just got to the point where it's like, what am I doing with this? What should I do as far as the how do I deal with it? It just got to the point where I was scared, nervous, and trying to figure out what was going on. I decided I needed to write the book down. I needed to talk about it all and get it out, kind of like a therapeutic purging, basically, and trying to make sense of it to myself. And that's pretty much what the first book came from.
I was going to just say that it must have been very therapeutic, because I know, I've been writing a book for years now, and I just have a hard time sitting down.
It's hard, yeah.
It's a matter of time. I don't have the time, but I want the time. And I want to finish this book because I know it's going to be really fantastic. And Victor's actually going to interview me when it comes out. But what I find is when I sit down and I start writing these things that happen to me in my life, the name of my book is Through My Eyes, and I call it that because it's about things that I see that other people don't see. And I sit down and as I'm typing it really is very therapeutic, and I have to agree with you 100% on that. It's an amazing feeling. It's like a calm comes over me while I'm typing. So I resonate with that completely.
It's interesting, Chris. When I write, I always say that my writing is channeled writing, that it's not really coming from me, it's coming through me, especially the poetry. I consider the poetry all to be channeled. And it's literally like being in sync, in connection with spirit, with energy, with everything that is, as the process is taking place. And I think it's a beautiful process.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's one of the things that I've just developed such a passion for it now, and it's just to the point where I can't believe if I didn't do it. I mean, I was a songwriter, so I always wrote little short books, 3 minutes long, and that helped in the writing of full-length book. But that first book, it's like it released the floodgates, and now I just feel like it was what I was given to get through those times where my dad and my son were taken away, and I just feel like that got me through it and continues to.
So tell us a little bit about what was in A Haunted Life.
Well, basically I start from the beginning, and I feel like the beginning talked about my family, and this psychic family, and what was going on, and the fact that I had found out at some point when we started doing genealogy, and I actually joined the Daughters of the American Revolution, and it's like a lot of genealogy involved with this, and luckily I found that my mother's line goes back very far, and I was able to get in that because there are, actual, known ancestors that were able to get in that, and they really check you on all that. They don't just let you in if you say, well, hey, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was in the Revolution. They won't let you in. You have to actually have the wills and the land grants and all that stuff. What turns out, supposedly, that my mother's great-great-great-great-great 10th great-grandmother was a woman named Alice Nutter, and this was in 1612 in England, and she was one of the Lancashire witches that King James hung her. So I don't know whether she was a Catholic and they hated it at that time, or whether she was psychic and they, of course, it was dangerous to be in those days. But it comes down from a long line, and I know it comes down from a long line on my mother's side, but supposedly she was my grandmother's ancestor. And that kind of got me thinking about lots of things. And I start from that, and I go on forward to my life on the road and all kind of crazy things that happened where psychic abilities were something I was kind of running from. They didn't help me yet sometimes. A lot of times they would help me. Other times they didn't show up whenever I needed them the most to help myself. For instance, one time a guy named Billy Bailey tried out for our band, and he was kind of strange, and he wasn't the best guitar player, and we needed a really smoking hot guitar player. Well, it turns out that when we turned him down, he went on a couple years later. He moved to L.A., and he became Axl Rose and started a band called Guns N' Roses. So, it doesn't help you sometimes in places where you could use the help, and it does help others, and that's what I found the most about that. But there are lots of things in there. There's everything with the kitchen sink. I just got it all out. Once my son and my father both came back after they died, that kind of tied it together, and that's where some of the guilt and things came into, where I decided, maybe I brought it in, maybe I let it in by embracing this psychic life, and I kind of just go through all that stuff. But it gets decent reviews, and people are kind of taken aback by some of the things in there. But you know what? I thought I need to be honest with myself, with everyone, and just lay it all out there. So there are times I don't look too good in it, and I think those sometimes make the most interesting books.
And our guest tonight is Debra Robinson. She's the author of The Dead Are Watching, Ghost Stories from a Reluctant Psychic. Debra, please tell our guests where they can get your book and also more about you and how they can connect with you.
Yes, you can go to my website, which is DebraRobinson.net, D-E-B-R-A, Robinson.net. And you can get the books. Those 2 books you can get in the Barnes & Nobles and Books A Million or Amazon. Order them, and they're through Llewellyn Worldwide Publishing.
And as we always tell our listeners, as we mentioned in the first hour, go out to your local bookstore, because your local bookstore is one of the keys to your local economy. Go to that bookstore manager and say, I want a copy of Debra Robinson's The Dead Are Watching. And if your local bookstore doesn't have it on the shelf, you say, well, order it for me. I want to buy it from you and support the local community economy. And we will be grateful that you did that. You're listening to Second Sight Radio on the DTM Wicked Radio Network. I am so happy to say that, Chris. The DTM Wicked Radio Network. We love Denny and Tiff. We love them, we love them, we love them. And folks and listeners, we love you too, because you guys are the best audience in the world.
I think it's important to say that, anybody who wants to hear this show tomorrow or archive, you can always go to iHeartRadio, because we are on iHeartRadio. As the station is DTM Wicked. Check it out, people. All right, so, Debra, please, tell us about your new book, The Dead Are Watching.
Okay, well, the new book, it's kind of a continuation from the first one. I recap a few things that have happened since. I believe that my son, James was his name, I believe that he came back quite a lot at first. He was 24 years old. It happened instantly. So one minute he's going along, and the next minute, he's unconscious. So I think that he was shocked at his death. He lingered for 4 days, and I think that he was very shocked, and I think he was confused, possibly, at that age. He was on top of his game. He was a professional rollerblader, professional musician, just a talented, happy kid. And I think he was shocked, and he came back a bunch of times. We saw him on a video that he had hooked up, a camera that he had hooked up where he had moved back home to save a little money before he moved to L.A., was living in our garage. We saw him there. He came to some friends. Several incredible things happened that just, terrified me, because I really, really wanted him to be at peace and to go to the light, or God, or whatever you believe in. And so I walked around the house talking to him constantly. James, go to the light. Do, the whole thing, the whole spiel. And it, just because it worried me so badly. And then not long after that, my father shot himself. The day we found my father's body, and he'd been despondent over several things, including my son's loss. There were several things that he was going through, and he was a very undepressed type of guy. Never had a depressed day in his life. So it really came out of nowhere, and we were really quite shocked. And my husband and I were sitting on the couch the night we found him, and I was crying, and we lived in this house for 30 years, and we know every sound. And it was quiet, and I was just crying and speaking out loud, saying, Dad, I wish I would have done more, and I had done as much as I could have done, but I just felt so awful, as you can imagine, with still grieving my son, and, my dad does this, and it was out of nowhere, and I just was sitting there crying, saying, Dad, I'm so sorry, I wish I would have done more, I wish I would have come over, whatever, and basically somebody snapped their fingers about a foot in front of our faces, very loudly. There was no other sound like someone snapping their fingers, and I knew right then it was him. And I spoke out loud, Dad, I know that's you. Do it again if you can do it again. And he did not do it again. I think it took all of his energy to get through that time. But it was enough. It was enough to make me realize, okay, he survived this, and it's going to be all right. And I told him, go to the light. I told him all the same things I told James. And I think that they did. I think they went to where they need to be. And my dad has never come back, just that once, to try to make me feel better, I think, because I was just so devastated. My son has come back, and still comes back every now and then, but I think for the most part he's at peace. And, that's what the book's about, all these crazy stories. My son had the psychic streak as well. He knew his death was coming. I don't think he knew exactly, and I couldn't tell either. was another one of those cases where I didn't know, couldn't use it for myself, and when I could use it for others. You know, I don't know, you guys have probably experienced that somewhat. I know a lot of psychics do. But, yeah, it's just he experienced a lot of premonitions and a lot of things. He started painting pictures of gigantic hearts with bloody tubes and veins sticking out of them, and I would say, James, what in the world are you doing? He started writing lyrics, and he didn't know. He would just shrug, and he started writing lyrics. One of his lyrics said, as close to tortured as I've ever been is lying here wondering if my heart might beat away and away and away. And I would say, you know, you always write happy songs. Why are you writing these sad songs? And he would just shrug. He didn't really seem to know. And then right after he was killed, he gave his heart and some of his organs to another person who came and met us that first year after he died at the event that we hold in his name. And wow, I'll tell you, you know, we were just, we were putting it together by that time. So there are so many stories in the book. I kind of put the whole kitchen sink in there, but, you know, it really was very therapeutic. Sorry to talk so long, but...
No, not at all, and thank you for sharing that very personal story with us. I'm going to share one with you now, just to show you something that I was talking about before. And I've shared this with our listeners on our previous network, and I'll share it now tonight. My first marriage ended badly, and of all the things to break up a marriage, spirituality and religion broke up my first marriage.
Wow.
I was growing in spirit and becoming more and more open, and my ex-wife was becoming more and more closed, and it led to a point where she could no longer tolerate what I was doing, and the relationship just fell apart. So taking it to the next level, I was doing some meditation, teaching meditation classes, leading meditation groups. And at one of these groups, this friend of mine came up and said, I know this woman who was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, and she'd like to learn about meditation, and she'd like to learn about energy healing and all the things that you do. Would you be willing to meet with her? And I said, of course. And he set up a meeting for me and this woman, her name is Judy. And we met on a Sunday, and she opened the door, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and we immediately recognized that we had traveled together before, the previous lifetime. And very quickly, we fell in love. And we spent 3 amazing, life-changing years together, and then she transitioned. And the day she transitioned, she had the breast cancer. It went to her brain. And the day she transitioned, we had her on home hospice, and I knew her time was coming short. And I knew I didn't have a proper suit for the funeral, so I was going out to get a suit for the funeral. And halfway to the clothing store, something told me, go back. The voice said, go back, and I went back. And I stood by her bedside, and her father was with me. And very softly, she stopped breathing, and her lips curled into a smile, and she was transitioning. And we made the arrangements and took care of everything that we had to take care of, and I decided I was going to rest. And we had 2 cats at the time, and these 2 cats could not stand each other. They would not be in the same room with each other. And yet I was laying on the bed, and guess what happens? The 2 cats jump up on the bed, and they sit down side by side like 2 little sphinxes in front of me. And I figured they were there to comfort me. I figured they knew I was in pain. They were there to comfort me. And as I'm laying there, their heads look up to the corner of the room behind me and follow something as if they're seeing something come across the room, across the ceiling, and then directly above the bed. And the next thing I knew, I felt 2 hands rubbing my back, and I knew it was her. I knew it was her way of telling me that she was fine and that she was moving on and that she loved me. And it was a very touching and beautiful thing. And that was the last contact I had with her. That relationship changed my life, and that message changed my life.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great story. You know, that's one of the beautiful things about this show, that between you and I and our guests every week, we have so many amazing stories to share with people. And, you know, I think what it does is it helps people to deal with their own things that go on in their life, you know, because maybe something like this happens to them in their lives, and they don't have somebody to talk about it with. And they hear us come out here every week on our show and put our lives out there and show them that, you know what, we all go through the same things, and they're not alone. And I think it's therapeutic for the listeners as well.
Chris, the greatest gift that we can give to anyone else, the greatest teaching, is our own personal experiences. and how we went through things, how we learned from things, how we overcame things, and how we became better people through our experiences.
Yes, I had so many people come up to me after they read my book talking about, this one in their family, their father, their brother, somebody committed suicide. And, the way the churches and things talk about suicides, it's so difficult for the survivors. I mean, it's bad enough you're just traumatized enough as it is, and then a lot of them talk about, they'll be stuck in purgatory, or they'll be, you know what I mean? It's so difficult for them. And of all the things, I think losing a child and someone to suicide, I think that those are the two things that people speak to me most about that have read my book and want some sort of reassurance about that. And I really believe that the judgment we put on ourselves is so much harsher than any God or any afterlife is ever going to put on us, personally.
Absolutely.
Well said. Very well said. Good. Vic, you want to take the next question, please?
Yeah, Debra, let's talk about some of the more frightening experiences you've had in doing this work. What are the things, you mentioned the poltergeist experience when you were younger. Did you have any frightening experiences later on?
The poltergeist thing, I think, was still the most frightening. I didn't realize, at 12 or 13 that, you could set the boundaries and say, stop it, or whatever. And I didn't realize about all the things that you could do. This thing was really focused on me, and it was scratching on my bed sheets and, when I was lying in bed. And I know a lot of people, and I'd like to ask your opinion of this, too, as far as your beliefs in the whole poltergeist type of phenomenon. If you believe that, it's the coming from someone psychic like that at that time in their life at puberty, such as I was, or if you believe it's actual, spirits or incarnate, whatever type of situations going on. But I think those were my scariest times.
Chris, you want to take it first?
Well, no, I'd like you to take it first. I want to share a story after that.
Okay. In my experience, what people refer to as a poltergeist, which, by the way, means noisy ghost, is the manifestation of energy from a living human being rather than something that's disincarnated or in spirit. And again, what we have to recognize is that each and every one of us is made of energy. Everything in the universe is energy. And sometimes that energy can be manifest and magnified, especially when people are going through emotional difficulties. You mentioned puberty, the changes of puberty, when hormones are starting to kick in. Fear is a tremendous generator of energy, as well as love. Love generates energy, too. So as we generate this energy, depending upon the volume of energy and the way we're manifesting it, it can affect things in the physical environment. So, for example, something can be made to move. And I'll share a story of part of an investigation I was on with one of the paranormal teams that I work with. We were called to a home out in Long Island, New York, where a young girl, I believe she was 12 and a half or 13, and her mother were going through a number of experiences. And we're standing there. There are four of us standing there talking to this 12 and a half, 13-year-old girl. And she had a handbag on her dresser with one of those floppy handles, like a loop-type handle, that was laying down to one side. And as we're standing there, she was emotionally upset because a dear uncle had passed away. And as she's talking about it and crying, this handbag handle loop actually lifted up 180 degrees, stood straight up, and then flipped out on the other side. And four of us were there to witness this happen. I recognized that this girl was generating this energy. You talk about movies like Carrie or Stephen King's novel Carrie, where that's taken to an umpteenth degree. This was a lot more subtle, but it did manifest in this handle moving, and that's what I believe. I know that's what poltergeist activity is.
That's amazing, because I've always, I've been kind of on the fence about it and uncertain in my own situation what was going on. So that's interesting to hear that.
I remember, I have, there's this woman I know, and she was telling me how things were flying around her house, and, you have to believe me, I don't know who else to talk to, and oh, by the way, I feel like it's touching me at night, and all this stuff. So I said, all right, me and my team will come there, and if you don't mind, we'll spend the night, we'll videotape you sleeping, and we'll see what happens at night. When we walk in the house, she had those collectible plates on those stands like James Dean and Elvis and and Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe. And as we walked in, I think there was 6 of them. There were 6 of them on the shelf, and 4 of them flew off at us. Now, they didn't just flew off at things. They flew off a good 2 to 3 feet, which blew me away. Okay, because that was the first time I'd seen an object fly off of a stand, and that kind of shocked me. I thought it was awesome. All right, what was interesting about it was I immediately go into psychic mode. I start feeling some energy, and spirit never showed itself. The energy was tremendous, but spirit never ever showed itself to me, ever once. Okay, but the energy was there. Then when the woman goes to sleep at night, and we're all up there. It was me, and it was my sister was with me, and then I think 2 or 3 other people from my team. I don't remember how many we were. Maybe 4, maybe 5. And we're videotaping her. And I'll never forget this, Victor. And I think I probably told the story before. But she was wearing a football jersey. And as we're sitting there, I said, "Oh my God, spirit is here. I feel the energy." It started getting like it was an angry energy. It wasn't a good energy. It was a bad energy. And all of a sudden, and again, this is the first time I'd ever seen this, I see her jersey start kind of creeping up her leg. And everybody is standing there with their mouths open. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. And I'll say, my mouth wasn't open. I was thinking, "Oh my God, this is freaking amazing." I loved it. So I got really close to her, and I started feeling the energy. And what was amazing was it started pushing me back, or trying to anyway. And I felt the energy pushing me. And as this was happening, she had oh Jesus Christ, a chain with the cross on it that was hanging on this thing, and it was like a pendulum. It started spinning. I was like, "This is friggin' just awesome!" And we're getting all this on tape, and then we actually saw her breath moving, like she was being felt up. At this point, I had to stop. I woke her up, I shook her, and she was like, "Why'd you wake me up? I was feeling really good." And Victor, this is a true story. This is God. Oh, I know. She actually got upset that I made her stop. You want to know what she said to me? You guys are going to be blown away by this. She told me that in all her life, I can't believe I'm going to say this on the show. In all her life, she had never, ever come to an orgasm with a man. But with the spirit, every time the spirit does something like that to her, she does in her sleep. Is that crazy?
Wow.
Chris?
I need some feedback here.
Chris was a
Friends too, that they will say that those who have been, like, say, molested sexually as children can feel things and things like that happen to them. Or do you believe that she was creating that herself then?
No, there was definitely spirit there. I felt it. It pushed me. It wasn't something she was creating because there was absolutely spirit there.
Chris, did you take any pictures? Did you catch any orbs? Because maybe she was having an orgasm.
I think I caught her right before the orgasm, but I have pictures from that night. I have the video from that night. Actually, my ex-wife has it in her house, but yeah, I mean, we have all the documentation. It was just a really crazy night, and it was just interesting to me because in the room I felt the spirit.
Wow.
But downstairs, when the plates were flying off the wall, it was just an energy that was there that was intense. It was immense, actually, big. But it never showed itself to me. Which I thought was
I had a in that little house. Whenever the 1940 census was just released not too long ago, in the last couple of years, I was able to look up that house that we lived in when I was 12 to try to find out some more information on who lived there. And I found out that it was my great-grandmother's, it would have been my great-grandmother's sister who lived there. So they were actually people that owned that house in our little town that were my relatives, distant relatives, but definitely connected to the line. And so I thought, ever since then, I've thought, okay, could it have been, me creating the energy, just coming into puberty and stressed and all the things that you go through as a 13-year-old, or is it a combination of both things, the Ouija board, all the other things that were going on at the same time? But when I found out that there were actual relatives there, then I began to think there could be something else going on there as well, and possibly my own fears ramped up and created some of my own energy flying outward as well.
Interesting stuff. I'll tell you, Victor, great show all along, my friend.
Absolutely. So, Debra, let's talk a little bit about your other interests. You mentioned your musical career. You also have a career in publishing. Tell us about that.
I have a music publisher in LA who pitches songs to famous people, famous singers. I mean, I think my last one was he was pitching one of my songs to Leanne Rimes. I write everything from, stuff like Adele, bluesy stuff, to more of the pop type country stuff. So, been really close on a couple pitches, but my son's got a CD out that after he passed away, I have a recording studio in my house as well. And after he passed away, we took all of his recordings and put out a double CD. CDs are kind of ancient now. I mean, everything's, MP3, but we put out the CD at the point 5 years ago, and my music publisher in LA, I sent one to him, and through them, one of my son James's songs got into the Matthew McConaughey movie trailer for a movie called Killer Joe, which, he'd have been thrilled. Maybe he was up there pulling some strings for that one, but yeah, he'd have been thrilled. He'd have felt like a rock star. So I think that was great.
How about singing a few bars of one of your songs for us?
Oh, let's see. Someone to love me, someone to love me tonight. That's one of them.
Don't stop. That was great. Keep going.
Yeah. I've got a gig this Friday, tomorrow. So.
You have a lovely voice, and thank you for doing that for us.
Sure.
Meanwhile, you have a series of books coming out starting next year. What are these books about?
Actually, I decided after the first two were nonfiction, I decided just to distract myself, which is what I do a lot. I just basically started writing some paranormal fiction. Kind of the first book is out, and it's called Sarah's Shadows. And that's a book, kind of a quest. I would say one of my favorite books ever was Stephen King's The Stand. This book is kind of like The Stand meets the afterlife, where, a girl dies and ends up in this in-between land, between the light and earth, and there are a lot of things that go on with that. So I was able to put a lot of my own beliefs, psychic beliefs, to use in that as far as, what happens to those who kill themselves and what happens to, that sort of thing. Like, my own thoughts, basically, are in that book, and yet it's entertaining enough to the people say they like it pretty well. And I just finished the sequel to that one. I'm going to have that one's going to come out next year, and another one titled the Haunting of Black Tower Mansion, which is another Stephen King type of book. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm focused on the paranormal for sure.
Wonderful. And let's ask this question. I think, what advice would you give to other reluctant psychics?
What I would say is that give yourself a break. Don't be so hard on yourself like I was on myself. Realize that some people are given certain gifts in more abundance than others, and if you can help others in the world, you're basically doing what you were put here to do, I believe. You also need to understand that there are protection methods that you need to, get used to and try to get up to speed with, because there are things that I believe there are things that you can attract that are negative, and I wouldn't want anyone else to go through some of the things that I've gone through. Living with that kind of fear that I've had over the years because I didn't have a mentor or anyone to explain to me, no one deserves that, and we put ourselves through some serious misery on this earth, and there's no sense adding to it.
Let's talk about that, because that's something that when we have other psychics on, we'd like to discuss. What methods of protection do you use?
It depends on whatever your religion or your thoughts in that way. Some people, will imagine a white light or light a candle or say a prayer. Just whatever you believe in is what works for you. That's the way I believe. For my own self, I basically I'm sort of the religious type, and I go back to just saying a prayer of protection and that sort of thing. But for a lot of people, it's different. Some people believe, in more Native American methods and saging and having a ritual of some kind that that they use to make themselves feel safe. Whatever makes you feel safe, whatever you believe in, will work for you. You just need to put it out there and believe in it.
Chris, do you want to address that?
Yeah. What she just said, I was actually going to ask Lisa's questions. I think it's a fantastic question.
Go ahead.
We have Lisa from our chat room. She says, when I close my eyes, I see faces moving around. She would like to know what you do when you see faces, but you can't hear them talking. Great question.
Well, what I do, I see faces too sometimes, and like I said, I hear the voices without the faces as well. Basically, I just wait until I think that they're ready to say something. A lot of times, if I see the faces, it has to do with something trying to get through, but they're not quite either able to do that. Either I'm closed off to it, or they're not able to have enough energy to get through what they need. What I would tell you, Lisa, is to focus, be calm. You can close your eyes, be very calm, and listen. Just listen to the feeling you get, whether you get the voice in your head like I do, whether you can read the faces or try to figure out if the faces look scared or whatever, and you can even address that and talk to them a little bit if you do want to, in fact, be in touch with the faces you're seeing.
Chris, you want to take Lisa's follow-up question there?
Yeah, one more is, I don't even know, is that even...
Dominate. She's saying dominate.
Oh, one is more dominant and he's talking, but she can't hear him. I don't know where she wants to go with that. She's saying that one of the face that gets more dominant and he's talking, but she can't hear him. I would say stop meditating. I think through meditation you could probably get your answers, and that's always my answer to something like that.
I agree. We have another question from River Wildfire Moon, our good friend River. She wants to know, have you ever experienced a time warp, out of place or a difference or a time slip? So let's do the time warp again.
Jump to the left and a step to the right. Okay.
Hey, you guys are pretty good. You want to come to the gig?
When I used to sing, my father used to tell me to stick to dancing, and then when I was stuck to dance, he would tell me don't quit your day job. So I'm a loser all around.
No, you're not.
That sounds like a brother thing right there. It sounds like some jealousy going on. You were too cute. That's what it was.
Oh, very nice. There we go. But anyway, have you ever had a time slip or a time warp?
I have never had anything like that, although I have felt that deja vu feeling many times where you start to wonder if you've been in a situation similar to that in some other life or some other time that you've forgotten, consciously. But I have read some things from other people who have seen things, back in, the French Revolution, gone to those places and seen that in front of them, which is really incredible. And I would love to have something like that happen to me. That has not happened yet.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I do believe that we, some of us, come back to get it right. And I also believe, I read a good book, a little book the size of a pamphlet, really, but it was fabulous. It really, really explained a lot to me, and I had an understanding better from it. It's by a woman called Betty Eady, and she wrote this little pamphlet called Embraced by the Light. And when I read that, I didn't understand why. Why would a 2-year-old get cancer? Why is a baby stillborn? I mean, if I was God, if there's God, and I was God, why would I be more compassionate than God and allow that to happen? It didn't make sense to me, So what I basically decided when I read her book, she says she had a near-death experience. She went to the light and spoke to the being there, Jesus or who you would like to, see that as. And they told her, we are all there in spirit, and we choose the body. Those that chose to be stillborn are so holy that they gave up this, 75 years here on earth that we usually get, and the pleasures that can go along with that. They gave that up because they're so holy. They gave it up to teach those parents of that baby or the relatives of that baby, or they were sent here to teach something. They chose it. So those that chose to die young, they chose that. They're the most holy, and they're the most respected up there. And I really love that thought. And that we're here to teach others, and in that vein, I believe that we can come back.
I agree 100%. Absolutely.
Great.
Well, we only have about 2 minutes left, and I mean, there's another question in the chat room. I guess we'll ask it, if you could give a short answer. Lisa wants to know, what are your thoughts about aliens? I know it's a little bit off topic, but Lisa's one of our regulars for years now, so I'm asking the question. What do you think about aliens?
You know, Lisa, I think that anything within the realm of possibility. I really believe in that there could be that. I mean, there are things that I'm a believer that there are things that we're not being told, that we can't be told because there'd be mass panic, and I have seen a few things like that, and my brother works for a very large corporation in media, and he told me a few things, too. So, yes, I do believe that there could be such a thing.
And on that note, we're going to say thank you to Debra Robinson. You've been such a wonderful guest. We're going to have you back on again. Your book is The Dead Are Watching, Ghost Stories from a Reluctant Psychic. And one more time, please tell our listeners how they can get your book and find out more about you.
Please stop into www.debrarobinson.net. That's DEBRA. And send me an email, say hi. You can check out my music stuff on there. You can check out my books. My books are available in your local bookstores, and if they're not, you can tell them to order it. And just say hi and check it all out.
There you go.
Well, we only have a few seconds left, so I'll take it down, Victor. And once again, thank you for being our first guest on our new network tonight. And we're here every week trying to make the unbelievable believable. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Good night.